Welcome to the show, All Things Writing. I am your host, Brian the Writer. Let me take you on a journey through my writing life and introduce you to some of the amazing talent that exists in the writing world. Whether you are looking for a little advice or just to catch an interesting interview, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All Things Writing starts now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show, All Things Writing. I am your host, Brian the Writer. Once again, I bring you a wonderful author interview with a couple of really interesting guests coming up. Going to have a wonderful guest on today, Mr. Scott Sykes. He is the author of, he's working on a couple different, I'm going to let him talk about that a little bit about what's going on with me right now. Currently, I am working on my next novel. It's a slow go for this one because I'm kind of undergoing a rather aggressive editing process this time around. Not to say that I don't normally go overboard and do a lot of editing, but this time I decided the point of view needed to change. So we're working on that right now. I say we, but working very hard at getting that part right. Editing, as I've said before, is something that if you're going to spend money on anything in the writing world, spend money on editing. Of course, the other aspects are really super important too, but editing to me is one of those return on investment sort of things. Early on, I made some mistakes with the editing process, and I regretted it. And honestly, I think I could have done a little bit more with the editing, but I've learned. That's really what it is about. Writing is a learning process. We all start somewhere, and normally, when we first start out, we don't think of things like editing, and we don't necessarily put our money where it needs to go, and we make mistakes. But editing is important. Hire a quality editor. Any editor that's worth their salt would be willing to do a 2,000 word or so free read for you. So they're going to give you some idea of what their editing process looks like, what kind of information they're going to give back to you. I have a wonderful editor that I use for all my indie novels. This one is not an indie novel, or at least I'm hoping it won't be an indie novel. And so therefore, the publisher asked me to do a little bit extra work on it. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to get it done. In the meantime, I've got some personal changes I'm going through in my own life, with my disability. I've got some changes in my healthcare stuff. So that's always grueling, and it slows the writing process down. In the meantime, not only am I doing that, I also re-released the Begorian Chronicles. You will remember that I had written a science fiction novel and I had it available. It was being run through a publisher for a while. Now it's come back to me, and I've re-released it, different cover. I spiffed up the cover a little bit, redid some of the back matter, and I think it turned out pretty good, actually. I'm pretty excited about it. You can find it on Amazon. Here's the new cover. Here's how you're gonna watch Miracle. Boom, there it is. Right. Go out, take a look. I think you're gonna enjoy it if you like light sci-fi, the stuff that makes you laugh. Now, the next person I'm going to have on is Mr. Scott Sykes. To be clear, Mr. Scott is actually, he's a sci-fi writer, which is sort of why I started the show talking about the re-release of the Begorian Chronicles. It's very cool to have a sci-fi writer. I don't have a lot of sci-fi writers on, but anyway, like I said, welcome to the show. Joining us today, welcome to the show, Mr. Scott Sykes. Scott, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. As I like to say, I love it when I get interesting people to come talk to me. Otherwise, it would just be me talking to myself, and nobody really wants that. Before we dive into it, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm born and raised here. Well, raised here in Delaware. I was actually born in Hawaii to two military parents, and came back here. Spent some time in the military myself. Went out to San Diego. Spent a couple years out there. Met my wife. Moved back here about, well, 22 years ago.
Okay.
Got two kids, one 24, one 22. One lives here with us. Another one, she lives in Memphis, Tennessee right now, works for the Memphis Redbirds, the AAA baseball team. She's having a blast there.
Cool.
Other than that, just normal every day, go to work, try to write and market on the side, try to figure that out.
Yeah, that's always it's almost like it's a set of shows unto themselves, book marketing. It's funny, people will ask me that, how do you market your books? And I'm like, I don't know. If you figure it out, please let me know,
Yeah.
because that's always a hard thing, right? So I do have to ask. So you moved out to San Diego, Navy?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. That explains it. I know instinctively. It seems like the Navy always sends their people to San Diego at some point in their career. That's just the way it always works.
Yep.
Yeah, can't really get away from that one. It's like the Army will eventually, if you hang around long enough, will eventually send you to Fort Hood. That's just the way it all works. So you are a science fiction writer.
Yes.
Very curious. What is it that kind of drove you into the sci-fi realm?
It's always what I've enjoyed reading.
Hmm.
I do enjoy reading fantasy. I don't really read much that's realistic because to
Hmm.
me, reading is a getaway. I don't want it to feel like
Yeah,
the real world.
yeah, same. Yeah.
So just always kind of grew up reading that, and it was just an easy write. I mean, when I started coming up with the idea of the of Eyes of Blue and like just playing around with it, really wasn't planning on writing a book. It was just kind of took that sci-fi post-apocalyptic feel and just kind of went with that.
What was your first science fiction book you can remember reading?
Um, Shoo. I know one of my favorites from middle school that I can always remember, and I read it at least once every 5 years, is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card.
Okay. Okay.
That one is probably the one that sticks with me the most.
I think that's actually Ender's Game is actually listed in like several like well published, well respected authors, pretty much genre non-specific. They list Ender's Game somewhere in their top lists of books to read, so it's not unusual.
Yeah.
Um, I just bought actually the Complete Hitchhiker's Guide, which I'm going to sit down and reread here at some point. It's always going to be one of my favorites. Lighthearted, a lot of fun. I think that's how a lot of people get introduced to science fiction and then kind of roll with it there. So, where did you watch a lot of like sci-fi movies and stuff too?
Yeah, growing up, I mean, my mom's a huge fan of Star Trek,
Hmm.
so um, we didn't have cable when I was growing up. We lived out in the country, so we had what we had. But yeah, watching Star Trek, doing all that. When I was able to watch movies, watching things like The Thing and
Hmm.
The Abyss and 2001: Space Odyssey. Yeah, it was a great escape.
Are you
And
sure
then
you're not a closet horror writer?
actually, I am kind of working on some thriller stuff right now.
Good, good, good.
Nope. That's
Uh,
kind of where my next one will be I'm working on. It's what do they call it? It's not supposed to be an anthology if it's all by the same author. It's a collection. That's what it is.
Collection, right?
A collection. It'll be 12 stories. That it's a thrilling year and short. It'll be 12 short stories.
Okay. So
Kind
will
of.
they all be will they all be connected somehow or?
No, no, they're not really connected at all. Some of them are just like one's back like leaving school, getting out of school. One's coming back to school. Those are connected. There's two right around Christmas time that are kind of connected, but most of them it's just different ones,
Okay.
different short stories I've been playing with.
So I love the question, and I don't know about you, but I get it all the time when I go and do shows. People are like, "So tell me about your books." I love that question because it's sort of ridiculous as an author because there's nothing we love talking about more than our own books.
Right.
So I know that your first book was Eyes of Blue, and it continues in the series, and the latest one being The Loss of Blue. So why don't you walk us through that series?
Well, the series mainly follows Ava. She's a 17-year-old girl. It starts, her book, Eyes of Blue, starts 2 years after the fall of society, after the apocalypse has happened. Um, it's this meteorite has a spore that turns dead, reanimates them. So they're kind of like zombies, but instead of eating brains and ripping and tearing, they actually suck your energy,
Okay.
electrical energy. So they can live off of like the electrical grid, but they pull energy from humans. That's how they kill you. And if you die from their touch, you don't rise again. But if you die from anything else, you'll rise again. So it's a little bit of a twist on the zombies. But it takes place here in Delaware. Starts at Cape and Lopin State Park and kind of works through. And it's she lost everything, lost everyone, and now she's been safe for a year, kind of living in this bunker. But it's not safe anymore, so she has to leave and go out. And then she runs into different groups, different things, and moving through the state. Then eventually she finds that she runs into her brother who was lost during one of the things, and they got split. And of course, during apocalypse, you can't just call them up, see where they're at.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep. So then the second book actually is from his perspective. He's 2 years older. He's 19. And it starts at the fall, like when everything is just starting. So it kind of explains how the fall happens, like around him as he's trying to get from Florida back to Delaware. And then he ends up in like a small military group, and he kind of works from there. That's how he ends up finding his sister. And then the third book takes both of those storylines where they end and pushes on with both of them together as they cross the country trying to save the world, basically.
So they have discovered some way to save the world,
Yeah, so
presumably?
the military group he was part of was also, they were supposed to be connected with these scientists, and the scientists think they found a cure to kill
Okay.
the spores, which is what reanimates everything and affects everything. And so they're going to cross the country. They want to get to a missile silo to be able to launch this into the atmosphere and kind of go from there. And then
Interesting.
it's everything that happens as they cross the country and how they lose people and everything else. Hence,
Okay.
loss of blue.
Lots of blue. Got it.
Yep.
Got it. Got it. Cool. Cool. So what what is it that brought you? Now I know. So I read your bio a little bit, and I saw that you had not considered yourself a writer necessarily. Now, me as a child, I always sort of played around with writing little things here and there, and not well, but writing anyway. But I was always a storyteller, and you said that you didn't consider yourself a writer, but you found this passion for storytelling. Um, what sort of prompted that storytelling, that drive, that interest?
Um, Not really sure. I mean, it started out, the kids were younger when we were watching The Walking Dead, and we
Hmm.
got talking about how, like, the zombies aren't really realistic. No, they're zombies. They're not, it's not supposed to be realistic, but
Right.
just how it would be a little more science locked in. That's kind of how I end up coming up with what the deaders are. Is what I call them. And then I don't know. I just got like a line stuck in my head, and so I started writing it, and then it became 2 lines and 20 pages, and then about 30,000 words into it, I'm like, well, this is actually becoming something. So then I started concentrating a little bit more on it, and then coming out with the book. It took me almost 5 years to from the start to actually where I published it. So just yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those. It's kind of stuck with me.
For 5 years for the first book.
Yes.
Okay. How much? What was the length of time between the first book and the second book?
About a year.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, and
Because that's
same with the third. I've been publishing them all just about in June every
yeah,
year
that
now.
that seems to be about my normal march, is about a 1 year time span, and then depending on what's going on. Been trying to write novellas lately, and I know you wrote one novella, but we'll talk about that one in a minute. Uh, Now you say you focus on that middle grade kind of reader. What is your experience with that genre, and why focus, or not genre, but with that stratigraphy, if you will, and why focus on that area?
I actually like reading young adult.
I do
So
too,
you
actually.
know, yeah, like Reardon, Patterson. I really kind of not the writing necessarily of eyes, but the patterning of it and all is very similar to Patterson's Maximum Ride,
Hmm.
like how it's from that first person female perspective, and so I kind of set the book up kind of that same way once I got figured out what it was going to be.
Hmm.
Um, I like the easy read, like
Okay.
it's not. I don't like reading like when you read Tolkien and he talks, 5 paragraphs about a leaf.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think George Martin is the same way. Like it's really in depth on what the scenery looks like and stuff like that. I like focusing more on the characters, their development, and the action of it all. Like I don't even really explain what my characters look like unless it comes to a reason to know. Like, oh,
Hmm.
her hair got caught because she has long hair. Like other than that, I don't really explain that she has long hair or how she looks or anything like that.
Hmm.
Because I don't like getting caught up in all the details. I like the story, and
Yeah.
that's the young adult kind of has more of that story feel, less of the details.
Yeah. I very much enjoy. I've enjoyed the not the Maze Runner, the Lightning Thief, Percy
Percy
Jackson. That's
Jackson.
it. The Percy Jackson series. I also really found myself loving Cozy Mysteries.
Mm,
Cozy Mysteries, another way. It's just they're fun to read. They're not you're not getting bogged down in these really in depth detail. I think I don't know. I do you find that a lot of times you'll pick up books and you'll be like, why are they still talking about this car after 3 pages? Get up!
I
I mean,
actually find myself in some books like skipping a page and like, okay, they stopped talking about that now, and I don't even read all I just like jump, So yeah, I
oh,
do that all the time.
that's the death of a storyline right there when you have people so bored they want to jump ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's
I
what I want to avoid. And I like the action. I like the character development and the story development is more important to me than what a car looks like that they're driving.
Well, and even Stephen King says in On Writing, sometimes a car is just a car, and
Yep.
I love that idea. I couldn't put it any more simpler myself. I just love that. So
Yep.
we talked about novella.
Hmm.
I have one novella. I actually, and the reason I'm thinking about this is I just did a reading of my novella yesterday, which
Nice.
is interesting because I have to do a German accent
Yeah.
for a good portion of it because the main character is German. Uh, but you wrote Message on the Wind,
Hmm.
and it's from 2023.
Yep.
I automatically identified with the book because I'm from Illinois originally.
Right.
Tornadoes are just a way of life. You get used to them. Everybody knows what to do. But you've taken this idea and you have a tornado as a messenger, in a sense.
Yep.
Uh, so, what kind of brought this idea along and I don't know where did this concept come from? How did you develop it?
Well, actually, earlier in that year, a friend of mine, we actually had a tornado here, which we don't have very many, so it's a little weird for us. But
Hmm.
it didn't hit their house per se, but it was close enough that it did damage to the yard, damage to the house.
Yeah.
So we were out there helping them clean up the trees and stuff like that. Um, I was hurt; my back was messed up, so I wasn't able to like do the big stuff. So I was working with my nephew,
Hmm.
and he was 11 at the time. So we just got talking. He's got this crazy imagination. And so we got talking about the tornadoes and what they were and this and that. And the idea kind of came from there. I mean, I changed it a little bit to make a story out of it. But we got talking about the tornadoes were sent from Oklahoma and because they have so many there and they just send them out to different states. And this is why. And
I love
that's
it.
why the main character in the story, besides the spirit god, is JL. It stands for Joshua Layton, which is my nephew's name.
Okay.
So that's why he's actually co-writer on it. If you look at the title on the cover, it has my name and his, J.L. Reed.
I wondered about that.
Yep.
Why there were two people on there? Yeah.
Yep. It was him. So him and I kind of put that story together, and of course I did. Had to change it up a little bit here and there to make it a full story. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's just kind of how it came about. Just kind of helping him get through the trauma of being in a house that a tornado just gone over.
Yeah, well, and it's funny is, out here on the East Coast, we of course think about the hurricanes being the big thing. Uh, in Illinois, we would hear about a big storm blowing through and a tornado, and you'll be driving along in the cornfields, and you'll just see a cornfield completely obliterated, going, well, a tornado hit,
Yep.
and you won't even know it because it just sort of happens, and everybody goes about their business and nobody pays much attention to it. It's a thing. It's a real life, and tornadoes are terrifying.
Yep.
Yeah, but so is why a novella?
It was something I was actually writing in between A Dim Blue and Loss of Blue to take a break from that story.
Hmm.
I actually have three novellas total, and
Hmm.
that one was just the latest one. It's like when I take a break, I'll do that, and I'll write 20 or 30,000 words, and not really want to do a full novel.
Hmm.
Put all the effort into that. The novellas, I kind of let them. I can write one in like a little over a month, just depending on. And it's just that break, just sit down and write. Don't really plan as much out, and just kind of see where the story goes.
Novellas are a wonderful break from writing a full-on book. I tend to like the longer form fiction rather than short story, so I have a little bit more fun with that particular thing.
Yep.
So I know that Loss of Blue is kind of your focus right now as far as what you're working on. But what's your future endeavors look like? Where do you want to go with your writing?
Um, well, after I finished Lost, it was supposed to be the end of a trilogy. It's now going to be a four-book series. So I'm actually working on the fourth book. It's actually going to be back from the brother's perspective.
Hmm.
So I'm in the works with that. Then I've got a couple other ideas. Like I said, I want to finish this thriller collections that I'm working on.
Hmm.
And then I've got one story that's definitely after I finish this set. It's going to be science fiction, but more like a comic book type of story.
Okay.
Um, with a hero and having different. He's actually got rune powers, so like the uh, stuff like that, like controlling time, days, stuff like that. So still kind of flushing that out, but it's been sitting on the shelf for a couple years, so I need to want to get started on that. That'll be the next one, and that'll probably be a couple book series from there. Something
Okay.
a little, they'll be a little shorter probably than these, more in the 60, 70,000 words instead of 90, just because that's kind of the way those books run.
Yeah. That sounds very fantasy-ish with the rune
Yeah,
stones, that kind of thing.
yeah, kind of in that magic realm, but yeah, yep,
There is an interesting, I think, science fiction and fantasy can run up against each other sometimes in very interesting ways. I think it makes for the better storylines, in my opinion.
right. Instead of just hard one way or the other.
Yeah, because I can make up all kinds of things science fiction wise, but if you can put some of that realism into it, I think it really does help move the storyline along. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, so the most important question I ever ask on this show is where can people find your works?
Well, I'm on Amazon, obviously. Everybody kind of posts there. That's the easiest way to get your books out first. Got ebooks, paperback there. Also print with Ingram Spark.
Hmm.
So Walmart, Target, thrift books, pretty much anywhere that you look, you can at least search for the book and find it. Um, and then I just came out with an audiobook for Eyes of Blue. Sky Alley did the narration for it. Just came out on Friday, so it's now on
Cool.
Audible. So
Yeah. Audiobooks are a super important part of any author's toolkit. You have to have them. It's something I am terribly behind on. I think if you talk to any author, we'll always be behind on something or another that we're supposed to be doing. But
That's for sure. But
yeah,
I definitely thought with the market that I'm trying to hit, that middle school or young adult, they all listen to books nowadays, like going to school or doing their schoolwork. That's like my daughter's in that time frame, and that's all she does is listen to books. She doesn't really read books
hmm
much. She listens to them. So I'm like, if that's where I'm projecting all of my stuff, I need to have an audiobook. Otherwise, I'm missing a huge portion.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, and horror, of course, is by definition very adult oriented. But there's a lot of us who drive, we'll drive across town and we get tired of hearing the commercials all the time. So we'll put in a book of some sort or another. We say
Yep.
put in a book like we're still putting in cassette tapes like cavemen, but
Right.
the reality is we just press something on our phone and things happen.
Yep.
But
But that's what a lot of times when my daughter listens is long drives or whatever. She's like, I hate listening to music that whole time. So she puts a book in, and
oh yeah,
then the mile just fall away, and she doesn't think about it.
yeah, yeah.
So
When I go for long drives, I always pick out something and listen to it on my way out. But yeah. Yeah. Well, Scott, it has been a pleasure. I appreciate you taking the time. Is there anything else we need to know about you before we sign off?
uh, no, not really.
Go out and go out and check out Scott's books, ladies and gentlemen. They sound terrific, and I think you'll very much enjoy them. I've read the back of some of them, and they look great. So you're missing out. Go check them out. Well, as we like to say on the show, thank you very much for listening to all my wonderful listeners, and of course, thank you, Scott, for being with us. You've been a great guest, and I appreciate the time that you've taken out of your busy schedule to come hang out with us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, stay tuned for other interesting things we're going to talk about. I know I owe everybody a couple of 5 minutes with Brian. I still have not done one recently, mostly because I've been editing my little heart out. But anyway, on behalf of all things writing, this is Brian the writer saying thank you, and we're signing off. This has been another amazing episode of All Things Writing. If you heard something that got your wheels spinning, check out the links in the show notes. Also, please follow the show and remember to leave those reviews. Those simple acts of kindness mean the world to us. Hop on over to briannowak.com, and that is Brian with a Y, and check out my latest novels. I'm on Amazon or wherever you buy your ebooks. And as a reminder, the music you heard on the show today was used under license from the artist Ryan Encona. Thanks for listening to the show and have a blessed day.